Today we're going to talk about a force that is constantly at work all around us, silently shaping the very ground we walk on. It's powerful, it's relentless, and yeah, it's called erosion. It's a process that sculpts our entire planet, from the most massive canyons you can imagine, right down to the tiny cracks in the sidewalk. Okay, let's dive right in. But we're not going to start with some boring textbook definition. Nope. Instead, I want to kick things off with a little puzzle, a mystery really.
So take a look at this house. Picture it 50 years ago, brand spanking new. Now look at it. The paint's all but gone, the wood is weathered and worn. It's slowly but surely falling apart. What happened here? What kind of invisible force could do this much damage over time? It's not just that it's old, right? Something else is going on.
And the answer is erosion. It's the whole process where rock, soil, and all sorts of other materials get worn down and literally carried away by natural forces. It's the reason that old house looks the way it does, and believe me, it is happening everywhere, all the time.
So how does this actually work? Well, to get that, we need to meet the main characters in this story, the powerful agents of erosion. These are the natural forces doing all the heavy lifting.
There are four big ones. First, you've got water. It can be a patient artist spending millennia carving out the Grand Canyon, or it can be a total beast, unleashing a flash flood that moves tons of earth in just minutes. Then there's ice. We're talking massive glaciers that act like planetary-scale sandpaper, just scraping landscapes clean. You've also got wind, which is basically an invisible thief, capable of stealing the very soil we need to grow our food. And last but not least, the subtle power of temperature itself, breaking solid rock apart from the inside out.
And if you want a sense of just how powerful these forces can be, especially wind, just listen to this. This is a description from the Canadian prairies during the 1930s. This wasn't just some storm you could hunker down and wait out. This was a full-blown catastrophe of erosion called the Dust Bowl, where the farmland literally died up and flew away.
What's so wild here is that a disaster like the Dust Bowl wasn't just a random act of nature. It was like the perfect storm, cooked up by a very specific recipe. First, you take years of farming that stripped the soil of its natural protections. Then, you add a severe drought that just bakes everything into dust. And for the final ingredient, the arrival of powerful hot winds. It's a truly chilling lesson in cause and effect.
But erosion isn't always some big, dramatic, sky-blotting event. It can be slow, it can be silent, and it can be just as powerful. Just think about temperature. Water seeps into a tiny crack in a huge boulder. Then, when it freezes, it expands by about 9%. That expansion puts out immense pressure, like a tiny jackhammer, pushing the crack just a little bit wider. Night after night, winter after winter, that freeze-thaw cycle pries solid rock apart. Kind of amazing, right?
So with all these incredible forces, wind, water, ice, temperature, constantly chipping away at the land, you've got to wonder, what could possibly stand in their way? I mean, is there anything out there that can actually hold the ground together?
What stands a chance against all that?
Well, the answer, of course, has been all around us this whole time. It's one of the most basic, fundamental parts of our ecosystems: trees. They are nature's #1 defense against erosion.
And trees are just brilliant at this job. They have this whole multi-layered defense system. Their vast root systems act like a tough, fibrous net, literally anchoring the soil, holding it in place. Then way up high, their leafy canopies work like a giant shield, catching heavy rain so the water just drips gently to the ground instead of slamming into it. The roots also act like a massive sponge, soaking up excess water that would otherwise cause destructive runoff. And get this, even the fallen leaves have a job, creating a protective blanket of mulch over the topsoil.
So it's pretty simple. When you take away the trees, you take away all of that protection. The results are totally predictable, and they can be severe. Soil washes away, it clogs up rivers with all that gunk, and that dramatically increases the risk of flooding downstream. And, just like we saw with the Dust Bowl, precious farmland can be lost for good.
And that brings us to a really crucial point. While erosion is totally natural, our activities, human activities, can crank the speed way up. And this creates a fundamental conflict, right, between what we need economically and the stability of the environment we depend on.
A perfect example of this whole dilemma is the debate over clear-cutting forests. On one side, it's the most cost-effective way to get timber, which is a huge part of the economy. People who support it say it's a renewable cycle, forests get replanted for the future. But on the other side, opponents point to all these hidden costs, like more erosion and flooding. They argue that a replanted tree farm is just a shadow of a complex, healthy, old-growth ecosystem. So this leads us to the big question. How do we find a balance? How can we get the things we need without setting off these chain reactions of catastrophic erosion and destroying the very ecosystems we need to survive?
One of the key ideas for finding this path forward is something called sustainable development. It's really all about thinking long-term. It's a challenge for us to find ways to live and build and grow today that don't end up robbing future generations of their own resources and stability.
And you know, we don't have to invent all these solutions from scratch. For centuries, the traditional knowledge of First Nations and Métis peoples has been all about living in harmony with the natural world. This incredible wisdom, passed down through generations, offers really profound lessons on how to use resources without using them up and how to maintain that critical balance. So we'll wrap up with a question for you to think about. Picture the landscape around you, your town, your city, maybe a local park. If you had the power to design its future, how would you strike that balance between the need to build and the need to preserve? What would you protect from the forces of erosion, and what new mark would you decide to make on the land? It's really the essential question we all have to face as we continue to sculpt our world.